Okay, and we're back with Texxe Mars. I'm doing God's work, says Lloyd Blankfein. God being Lord Rothschild in direct connection. That's probably about as far as we need to take it, but there's much more to it than that, and please go ahead.
Well, you know, if you go to Wikipedia and you try to determine the ownership of Goldman Sachs, they'll tell you it's a publicly traded company. But, you know, you and I can buy a few shares of Goldman Sachs. That doesn't mean we own any influence in the company. But it does note that there is a consortium or a pool of 221 unknown individuals who actually control the corporation. And I've been able to determine that the Rothschild faction controls about 38% of the stock. And, of course, 38% is a significant amount of stock.
That is.
Now, Goldman Sachs has been around a long time. The interesting thing about Goldman is that it was actually founded way back in 1869. You know, Lincoln, to some extent, really confounded and put the European banks on their heels. Then Lincoln, of course, was assassinated, and it was just 4 years later, in 1869, that Goldman Sachs was founded. And ever since then, they've been one of the powerhouses in the world banking system. But now, it is absolutely unparalleled. You know, one of the things that people need, there's so many patriots and good folks out there that say, well, at least they don't control the gold market. You know, they really think the gold market is something that is not controlled. But actually, the gold market's quite small. And now we find out the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, this one guy, you know, there's some heroes out there, Jeff. I'll tell you, you're one, I know that, in the media. But let's just look at this little group called GATA, or, you know, the Gold Antitrust.
Oh, yeah, GATA, sure. Bill Murphy, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Murphy. And then they got this whistleblower from London, Andrew Maguire, and they totally blew the whole thing on the gold-silver manipulation by J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, it happens that J.P. Morgan Chase evidently daily sets the price of gold. And they work with a Chinese bank, HSBC, which is now probably the third or fourth largest bank in the world. It's actually Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation. So, you know, here we have this Chinese bank owned by the commies working with the capitalist J.P. Morgan, and they're setting the price of gold on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So if you own gold and you've lost money today, well, just blame Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan, and Mr. Lee, who's one of the top shareholders of HSBC in Shanghai. Now, this is the reason why Henry Paulson, as Secretary of the Treasury, remember he was also he was Secretary of the Treasury under George W. Bush.
Right.
He's the guy that gave all these, you know, billions, trillions to the bankers, the TARP, and all this stuff. Well, Paulson had previously been CEO of Goldman Sachs.
Oh, they have more alumni than USC.
Right. Now, but listen to this. This same Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury in the Bush administration, former CEO of Goldman Sachs, in his 1.5 years as Secretary of the Treasury, he made 70 trips to Red China. Well, of course, he was working.
Yeah, that's
70 trips. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's a long ways. It's, 12 or 13,000 miles over there?
Yeah.
Takes 20-something hours of air travel, one way. 70 trips. And, of course, Jesse Ventura did us a little service when he exposed the fact that Maurice Strong, another one of the world's bankers from Canada, and former head of the United Nations Environmental Program, is living in Shanghai. He lives there in a big mansion. Of course, Neil Bush, several of the Bush clan, now live permanently in China, and they've opened up country clubs and golf ranges.
I didn't know Neil was living over there now.
Yeah, so they've got a whole... Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Well, China Today also indicated that it was going to go along and support Americans America's call for sanctions and boycotting of Iran. So,
well, that would make sense. Now, I believe also you have to understand why the price of oil recently has ballooned up to $85, $86 a barrel. That's because we're trying to get Putin and Medvedev on board as well.
Right.
So all of these things we just buy these people off.
It's got a price.
That at a price. So I want people to understand that, there's a professor. I was just reading a little item from him. It was quite interesting. Jeff, his name is David Bromwich. He's professor at Yale. And he was talking about how Barack Obama is owned by the banking cartel. And listen to what he says. And I'd love to have your opinion as a historian. He said Barack Obama is Wall Street's investment. We are a long way from John F. Kennedy.
Well, he's right on the money. How do we get any further away from John Kennedy? Obama is owned and operated through the Chicago mob and money cartel, ultimately, of course, by Wall Street. He is Wall Street's boy. How do you read it? I don't see any...
Oh, John F. Kennedy, you can talk about his sexual peccadillos, but
no, I don't.
The guy took on U.S. Steel, took on these...
all the big boys. And
absolutely.
Absolutely going after those who today exact such a terrible price on this country. All right, be right back with Texxe in just a couple.